such a scale of mass atrocity crimes as the Russians commit in Ukraine has never been seen in Europe for a long, long time.
We see the number of open criminal cases by the Office of the Prosecutor-General, more than 30,000.
We should build our own national mechanism with an international element.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. I'm your host, Maria Romanenko. Thousands of apparent war crimes have transpired during the 7 months of Russian-Ukrainian war. The liberation of Ukrainian cities like Irpin, Bucha and Izium has exposed the use of captivity, torture, rape, murder and forced transportation as mechanisms of instilling fear in Ukrainians. Whether is Russia compensated for its lack of military successes or just showing its true colors, its regime is now a threat to the whole civilized world. Last month, the EU presidency called for an international tribunal for the crimes performed by Russia in Ukraine. This sentiment is shared by millions of Ukrainians living through an apparent genocide of their nation. If you're interested to find out more, then please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. Before we proceed to sharing some commentary from our guest tonight, we prepared a good combination of lawyers and government representatives. I would like to share some footage filmed by Iryna Voronkina, a journalist from Kharkiv. Voronkina went to Izium last week to document the state of the Kharkiv region city after months of Russian occupation. She says that 80% of the city is destroyed. Let's have a look.
Місто пошкоджене, будинки зруйновано, люди ходять в пошуках води, ходять вони до джерела, до святого. Скрізь техніка, як військова, так і цивільна, вона пошкоджена. Треба сказати, що місто поступово відроджується, працюють комунальники, але куди не кинь око, руйнування, руйнування, руйнування. Пошкоджені школи, зруйновані спортмайданчики, розтрощені дитячі ігрові майданчики, поряд із яскравістю, вирви. Красивенний палац, який має чудову історію і побудований у 1926 році, фактично знищено, бо всі внутрішні оздоби там зірвані і зламані. Замість вікон – бійниці. Цей будинок культури – залізничник. Сюди приходили люди, тут збиралися діти. Що тут зараз, неможливо уявити. Тут жили орки, російські орки. Це приміщення бібліотеки. Пляшки. Темні коридори з залишками одягу. І подивіться, який красивий зал.
What a heartbreaking personal account of a journalist who calls the region her home. Let's hope that the city will be rebuilt soon. To find out what Ukraine is doing to hold the perpetrators of war crimes accountable, we spoke with Anton, the ambassador at large at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. He works on the issues of the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine.
We do see a lot of mass atrocity crimes committed by the Russian servicemen, Russian military in Ukraine. These are alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity, alleged crime of genocide. And we may be sure that such a scale of mass atrocity crimes as the Russians commit in Ukraine has never been seen in Europe for a long, long time. And of course, it is important to bring all the perpetrators of these crimes to responsibility, using all the possible mechanisms, in particular national courts and also the International Criminal Court in The Hague. But what is most important is that it is not enough to bring perpetrators of these crimes to responsibility. It is important to secure accountability for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, which has been committed by the senior political and military leadership of the Russian Federation since February 2014, since the start of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And it is important that we wouldn't feel the justice and the accountability done and established if we see that the Russian political and military leadership isn't brought to responsibility for the crime of aggression. It is obvious that it is not possible to use national courts, national mechanisms to bring these perpetrators to responsibility due to their immunities as heads of states, heads of governments. We also cannot use the mechanism of the International Criminal Court because the International Criminal Court doesn't have the jurisdiction over the crime of aggression against Ukraine. It could have such a jurisdiction only if both Russian Federation and Ukraine ratify the Rome Statute and the Kampala amendments on the crime of aggression to the Rome Statute, or on the other hand, if the United Nations Security Council decides that there is an act of aggression in its resolution and refers the situation to the International Criminal Court. We understand that these prerequisites are really hard to be done nowadays, and that is why we, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian society, experts from both Ukraine and from many other states, international lawyers, suggest that the needed mechanism to bring perpetrators of the crime of aggression against Ukraine to responsibility is the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. Establishment of such a tribunal, which should be an international tribunal based on the basis of either a multilateral treaty between Ukraine and a number of foreign states or an agreement of Ukraine and international organization, should be the proper basis for bringing the perpetrators of the crime of aggression. It is necessary to be able to bring to responsibility not only the direct perpetrators of war crimes and crimes against humanity, but those people who were in charge and who are capable of giving orders for the military to conduct the illegal.
Another comment on what Ukraine can do to speed up the trial process was given by Gyunduz Mamedov, Ukraine's Deputy Prosecutor-General between 2019 and 2021.
No national judicial and legal system will be able to cope with such a scale. Therefore, we should build our own national mechanism with an international element. This hybrid mechanism will provide an opportunity to circumvent the immunity of officials involved in the commission of crimes. It will enable representatives of law enforcement agencies and the judiciary involved in this mechanism to gain relevant knowledge and skills. This will cause great confidence not only within the country, but also abroad. And the execution of such punishments will not raise doubts among our partners. The hybrid mechanism is in no way a substitute for the International Criminal Court, which, as you know, has already started investigating crimes in Ukraine. Instead, it is intended to complement it because the scale of such crimes, as I said, is very large.
And finally, the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Helsinki Union for Human Rights, Oleksandr Pavlichenko, talks about the history of the war crimes trials, their successes and failures, as well as the two ways Ukraine can hold Russia accountable. Let's take a look.
We are speaking about different possibility in bringing to justice the perpetrators. The first and visible way is the use of national law enforcement structures and judiciary, and we see the number of open criminal cases by the Office of the Prosecutor-General. More than 30,000 criminal cases related to the alleged violation of the Article 438 and close Articles 437 and 436 that namely are related with the violation of the rules of war and acts of aggression or aggression as a war. And the second visible mechanism is the International Criminal Court that just declared its will to consider several cases and started even the gathering the evidences on the war crimes, crimes against humanity, and we may consider that they will also reflect some cases that might have characters of genocide crimes. But still, the number of international mechanisms, including the European Court of Human Rights, that also protect the human rights listed in the European Convention of Human Rights, and namely the such fundamental rights as the right to life, right not to be tortured, right to freedom, that are brutally violated on the occupied territories, on the annexed territories that are temporarily occupied by Russian forces. And this second instrument is also applicable and still in force. But the state that should respect this decision of the European Court refused to be the part of the convention. So now we are in the situation when we are awaiting on the return of Russia to the jurisdiction of the European system established by the European Convention of Human Rights. Well, international instruments that existed till now demonstrated its force and possibility to consider the cases related to the brutal violations of international humanitarian law or international law in the human rights dimension when we are speaking about the European Court of Human Rights. And till now, we have different decisions and different level of the application of this decision and the execution of the verdicts of the courts. When we're speaking about the European Court of Human Rights, we have seldom cases that were not executed during dozens of years. For example, the cases related to the occupation by the Turkey military forces in North Cyprus, and related cases were not executed, and it was like a bright example when the limits or the jurisdiction of this international institution was limited, because it was based on the agreement of all parties to execute the decision and implement this decision into the national legislation, and to let's say to change the policy and stop the violation that was recognized by this international institution. In the case of the international humanitarian law, we have the successful stories with the Tribunal on ex-Yugoslavia that brought to justice more than 160 persons that was considered the guilty in the brutal violation of international humanitarian law, and they committed and they were accused, and it was proved they committed the grave war crimes, massacres, genocide crimes, and probably the best effective result was demonstrated by this court and by the tribunal that considered the situation in Rwanda, and also has the very successful and well-executed decisions.
You've been watching the special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic Course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, then subscribe to our channel, like and share this video. Glory to Ukraine!